Hello. I'm making this screencast in order to help explain the local history assignment. This is an assignment that we do first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. Now in the fourth quarter, the assignment changes a little bit, and I'll talk about that and have another screencast as we get closer to the fourth quarter. The basic assignment for the first three quarters, however, is the same. And in this assignment, what we're trying to do is gather up primary source documents, primary sources. A primary source, and an explanation of this project is on this link here on our website. A primary source is a first-hand account. A primary source can be an interview with someone who witnessed an event. It can be a photograph taken of a particular time, a particular place that in some way highlights or explains an event or a period. It can be an artifact. A primary source can be a spearhead. It can be a text from a period. And this is what we want to look for. What you'll be doing in the local history project is going out, and for the most part, most of you will be interviewing people in order to gain some primary source material about different events in U.S. history that have happened, for the most part, in the late 20th century and early 21st century. The way most of you do this is you will take a digital camera. You will then think of the oldest person that you know well, maybe a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, family friend, can be a parent, and you will sit down and interview this person. The first thing I want to talk about before we get to the content of that interview is some of the technical pieces of conducting an interview. I highly recommend, and it's why they're here, these two video clips from Ira Glass in which he talks about storytelling. Now, Ira Glass is someone, he has a weekly radio show that's on public radio every Sunday night, 6 o'clock. It's called This American Life. And what he is very good at is using audio storytelling, interviews with people, in order to get them to tell a story that may lead to some different understanding, or at least some provocative thought. In these two, he talks about the building blocks of storytelling and how to use the interview in order to get those building blocks so that you have a really compelling interview. I won't summarize what he says here, but I recommend you listen to it. He'll talk about the two components of a good story. The other thing right here in the middle are the ABCs, and the ABCs have to do with the technology. They have to do with the camera. If you are recording an interview, if you are, and this is what most of you will be doing, make sure your ABCs are correct. The A is the audio. It's the first thing. Your audio is the most important piece of the interview. If your camera somehow malfunctions and you don't get an image, or the image is blurry, or it's in any way kind of distorted, if the audio is clear, you still have a functioning project. You still have a project that's good. By contrast, if you're using a camera and you have a perfect image, I can see the person perfectly, everything's great, but the audio for some reason doesn't work, you don't have a project. If I can't hear them, if I just see a mouth moving, then it's not functional. That doesn't count. The second piece, the B, is the battery. You might get an interview with your grandfather, and he talks for 25 minutes about different events, Vietnam and John F. Kennedy. And it's fantastic in every way, but your battery ran out after 2 minutes into the interview. The best way, of course, is if you can, make sure your camera, your recording device is actually plugged into the wall. If that's not possible, depending on the camera or circumstances, just check your battery before you begin. Make sure that you have enough battery in the camera and that it's functioning. And the last is the camera shot. Think like a photographer. When you set the camera up, probably the person you interview will be seated somewhere, kitchen table, maybe on a couch in the living room, something like that. When you set your camera up, make sure it's steady. Don't hold it. Don't hold onto it in your hands. Set it down on something, a coffee table, a kitchen table, something like that. And then look through the viewfinder and make sure you haven't cut the top of the person's head off, or the side of their face off, or some other unfortunate thing. Make sure there's enough lighting and that I can see the person. It's a little piece, but it's something you want to think of before you hit record, and that way your project comes out intact and functional. The number one idea, the best idea that people do is an interview, recording an interview with someone. If you don't have access to someone that seems uncomfortable, no one will agree to an interview to be recorded, you can always go and look into the family photo album. 15 to 20 photographs on average, depending on the content, is an acceptable and a substantive addition to the local history database. And what you're looking for in photographs would be old family photos, the older the better, maybe around main streets, public areas, wedding photos are good. Whatever you have in which you can make an argument that this photo shows something about the time period, and incidentally most photographs do. Clothing says something about a time period. Where people are, backgrounds, old cars or tractors, equipment, all these things count. If you don't have photographs, you don't have anyone to interview, some other good topics that people have done in the past, houses, the history of houses, your house, another local house, history of farms, especially, can be really, really fruitful. And what you can do is research the age of the house, who has lived there, the development of the house, how it's been used, and as I say, farms are especially rich for this. Also public buildings, town halls, grange halls, in which you go and you do the research and perhaps find a combination of these things, photographs, interviews with people, but you're researching the history of a particular spot, a house or a building. So these are some ideas, and if you need further ones, email me and I can help you brainstorm an idea. The most important thing around whether it's an interview, you're gathering photographs, or you're conducting any other sort of research, all items that you get must be copyright free, which means they can't be previously published. And the people that you interview and the photographs that you scan from people, scan and make digital files of, it must be clear to whoever you're interviewing or whoever you're getting photographs from that these photographs and interviews will be public. These are not a private interview between you and the person that will only be seen by me, the teacher. You must make it clear to the person you're interviewing or the person you're asking photographs from or in any way interacting with along the lines of this project that this is to be public and it is to be published. That's really critical. And make sure people understand that this is going to go online and will be preserved and will be seen by hopefully many, many people. Now, for the rest of this screencast, I'm going to approach this as if you are conducting an interview because the interview requires the most preparation. Photographs, you simply scan in. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but it's hopefully somewhat self-explanatory. The interview goes like this. The way I recommend doing this is picture in your mind who you're going to interview. Let's say it's your grandfather. Well, let's say your grandfather is 70 years old. The way to prepare for this interview generally is this approach. You want to do some quick math in your head. If your grandfather is 70 years old, what year was he born? Well, this is 2010. If he were 70 years old, you say, do some quick math, carry the one, all that sort of thing. He's born in 1940. Okay. Your grandfather was born in 1940 then. Well, let's give him the first 20 years of his life to not pay very much attention to what's going on around him. It's frequently the case that young people are focused on their own lives, and they're maybe not that aware of the great wide world around them. I will put in a caveat here that that's not always certainly the case. Not certainly the case at all in all circumstances. And if the person was a teenager during very trying times, or maybe even grew up, older people who might have grown up during the Depression, and that sort of thing, they might have been children during the Depression, but it was such a powerful event, you would still want to ask about it. In any case, in general, give people the first 20 years. So Grandpa was born in 1940, put 20 years on top of that, 1960, okay. Anything from 1960 to the present day is fair game in an interview. They were adults at 20 years old, and they maybe will have some familiarity with the questions you might ask. Well, what you want to do at that point is say, okay, what happened of any significance in America between 1960 and the present day? Well, I've put on the website these links. These are nothing fancy. They just go to Wikipedia timelines in U.S. history. But if you're preparing and you say, okay, from 1960 up is fair game, you might choose this timeline to start with. And when this timeline comes up, what we'll see is a timeline history of U.S. history from 1950 to 1969. Okay, and when you get to the timeline, you would scroll down, find the year you want to start with, and we've said from 1960 up is fair game, and you just start scanning through. Now, when you're scanning through, based on what you know about the person you're interviewing, based on your own personal interest, based on things you might have heard of, start with those events, things that pop out. John F. Kennedy becomes president. The Civil Rights Act of 1960. And you scan through, Vietnam War officially begins. And now some of these events, again, you probably have heard of in the past. If the person you're interviewing has served in the military, then certainly their military services is something you want to ask about. But kind of go with your familiarity at this point. Pick out a few things. I would say you want 5 or 6 things from each decade that you want to ask about, and that will lead you to, depending on how far you go, 20 to 30 questions. Now, 20 to 30 items to ask your person about is not too many. You're going to want this many. For this reason, some of the questions that you ask, some of the events that you may ask about, the person has no real reaction to. They have nothing they really want to say about that. You can tell when you ask it, they don't have a lot of passion for that subject. That's why you want so many things on a piece of paper, on a list. 5 or 6 things from every decade, and that will give you enough material that in the interview, even if 1 or 2 or 3 things start missing and don't get a big reaction from your interview subject, you're bound to have something that they do remember well and want to tell you a story about. So you go through decade by decade on this, and you can click onto this next one. And again, you just scan through and you're just picking out things that you think might be interesting based on your interest and based on the person you're interviewing's interest. And it's just that simple. Once you have your topics, you make an appointment to meet the person, and you sit down and you ask them about these things. Now, the person you're interviewing is doing you a favor. And and they say in business, the customer is always right. The interview subject is always right. So whatever happens, if they don't feel like talking about a certain subject, that sort of thing, they're always correct to just move on. Always be sensitive to the fact that these are people's personal experiences they may be telling you about, so certainly be respectful. Again, if you ask about military service, some veterans may want to speak of their military service, some veterans may not want to speak. And of course, you want to just be decent around all of these topics. Sometimes people in interview may tell you things that are emotional or personal, and certainly be respectful of that, and don't treat their life stories as if it is only your school assignment. When you have your file done, your interview file done, you want to upload it to YouTube. If you have any technical problems, email me or come in and see me, and I can try to help you with those. When you have your photographs done, if you have them scanned into files, you want to log into your Google account, and you would click on this More, and then Even More. And the program you want is called Picasa. If you click on this and then click here on Picasa Web Albums, what you would see is that you can upload your your photograph files onto your Google account. And from there, we can embed them and move them around and show them how we need to. And so what you want to be prepared to hand in to me is either a YouTube video link or a link to a Picasa web album. If there's any particular question on that, please feel free to email me. If you require another screencast on how to do something more particular, like upload a video to YouTube or put photos into Picasa, I'll certainly make that. In general, the Local History Project is designed to start conversations between generations about what has happened in this country and how that affected this country and the people within it. History is, in part, a conversation, and one of the goals of this class is to help you understand that part of historical thinking and understanding your history is engaging in that conversation. And that means talking to people across generations who have lived through things and can provide not only the stories, but an understanding of how citizens have reacted to major events in the past. Okay, thank you.